Welcome to Aunt Hetty's Creative Kitchen. On this episode, I'll be making round steak, fried morel mushrooms, and baked potato with sour cream and butter. And for our second meal, we'll be making creamy garlic pork chops, brown sugar glazed carrots, and coleslaw. Hi, it's Heather here. Let's get started on a no fuss, nothing fancy, just real food and easy living video. You'll find meals on a budget, menu planning, yummy recipes, and what's for dinner. Let's get started. This day we got to have a special treat. Michael had stopped into Walmart and gotten some steaks, and we had morel mushrooms. These came dehydrated from Michigan. My dad had ordered them, and we were lucky enough to get some from him. So I'm just checking out these steaks. Michael got them. It was 1.5 pounds of round steaks. They're tenderized, and it was only $4 for the package. And here's the mushrooms all rehydrated. They just soaked in some water. It said to soak them like 15 minutes, but I soaked them a couple hours, and they really puffed up nicely and got nice and moist and plump again. So if you've never had morels, they're quite a delicacy, at least here. I live in the Midwest in Iowa, and you can hunt them outside. They're in the timbers, and sometimes they're out in grassy areas too. But they're kind of hard to find for some people, and if you don't have access to land where you can hunt for them, they really can go for quite a premium for people that do find them to sell. So these I know were safe and are actually morels because they were purchased, but you do have to be careful when you're hunting for mushrooms if you don't know what you're doing. So I'll just put that little disclaimer out there. But what I'm going to do with these is fry them. And I've got some butter or margarine melting in a skillet and getting that heated up. And I'm just going to, I cut these morels in half and then let them drain a little bit on a paper towel. And then I took some flour and I put a little Lorry seasoning salt in with it. I kind of wish I wouldn't have and just used a little salt and pepper. But I thought I'd try it for something different, and it was a little too salty, but they were still good. You really can't mess up morels too bad because they're just so yummy. They don't even really taste like regular mushrooms. And it's just, I can't even describe it. But we like them fried like this. So I got them with some flour. I dredged them in the flour and Lorry's mix, and then put them in the butter to fry. And here I am turning them all over to the other side. You can tell when they're ready to turn over, they start to get crispy. But not, you don't want them to be too crispy, but they start to get a little crispy around the edges. So I have one pan here that's getting done now. And I'm going to remove those from the pan. And I will put them on a plate. I usually use a plate that has a bunch of paper towels on it so that the grease can soak up a little bit. And they're very hot, of course, so they need to cool a little bit. So while those are getting some of the grease drained off and cooling, I'm going to go ahead and start a second batch. And I'm going to just cook those the same way with some butter, and you want to make sure there's enough butter in there that they're not going to start burning and sticking on the bottom of the pan. So in this other skillet, I have just some butter melted also, or margarine. I think this might be margarine. Usually I have butter on hand, but I don't right now, so I used margarine. And I just put each of those round steaks in the butter and cooking them on medium to medium high. Looks like this second batch of mushrooms is just about done. Let me know in the comments if you've had morel mushrooms or not and what you think of them. They're one of my favorite things to have to eat, and you don't get them very frequently. I maybe at this stage in my life have them once every couple of years, so definitely don't get them enough. Here's what they look like all fried up. We may have nibbled a few out of there before I took the video, so there were more than that. And then our steaks are getting done here, so I'm going to remove them from the plate. And I made a baked potato with some sour cream and butter to go with it. The next day we had coleslaw, pork chops, and carrots. So I'm going to start by taking a medium-sized bowl and putting in about a half a bag of coleslaw. And then I put in about 3/4 a cup of mayo, a couple tablespoons of sugar, and a splash of vinegar. Now this is all going to be to taste. So once I get this mixed in, I kind of started here, I'll go through and give it a little taste again. I didn't put in any more vinegar, but I did add a little bit more mayo and sugar. So once this gets mixed, I added a little salt, and you just kind of have to let it sit in the fridge to get all the flavors to melt together. And it'll make it a lot creamier also. And that's all that's to the coleslaw. So that makes a pretty cheap side dish. And then for the carrots, you can get these whole bags of carrots for next to nothing. And it's a pain, but they're so much cheaper. And so I'm just going to start by peeling them and cutting off the ends, and you pretty much, I'm going to dice these so they cook quickly, and I just cut them down until they're in decent sized sticks and then dice them from there. Now these, I'm just going to boil in some water till they get soft, and then I'm going to add a little brown sugar and butter, possibly a pinch of salt. And that's all I'm going to do here for the prep for these carrots. Now I'm going to come in, and it's been a couple hours later. I'm going to work on the pork chops. I'm going to put about a tablespoon of olive oil and 2 tablespoons of margarine in a pan to melt. I'm going to season the 2 pork chops. You can use 4 if you need to, or whatever amount. I just salt and peppered them. And then I'm going to place them in on medium-high heat, 375 oven. In the skillet, and we're going to bake them about, I'm going to cook them 3 to 5 minutes on one side, about where my oven wanted them to be. Then I'm going to flip them over and cook them another 3 to 5 minutes. They were really good with a nice big glass of milk. These were kind of thin, so they took only about 3. Then I'm going to remove them from the pan. I'm going to add a good sized teaspoon of garlic, minced garlic. I'm going to take the whisk and whisk that around. And then I'm going to add a tablespoon of flour and get that all browned and through the pan. Then I'm going to add a half a cup of chicken broth, a good squirt of lemon juice, and some garlic powder. I'm going to let this come to a boil. I'm just making a roux so it can have a sauce over top of our pork chops. After that gets bubbled up and thicker, I'm going to add about 3/4 of a cup of either whipping cream, or I used vitamin D milk and it worked just fine. And I'm letting that come to a boil again and just going to let it thicken up. And then we're going to place the pork chops back in. And it's going to take about 5 to 10 minutes more. So you'll just want to keep an eye on them and turn them over every once in a while so both sides can get the flavor from the sauce and they can cook evenly. I put the lid on it to keep the heat in a little bit and keep them moist. Over here we've got those carrots that we prepped earlier. I drained them after they boiled till they were soft. I added a few tablespoons of margarine, and now I added about 3 tablespoons of brown sugar and just made a brown sugar glaze for them. I also added a little bit of salt to them when I did that. And then our pork chops are done. And these came out very tender. I could cut mine with a fork. And we just went ahead and plated those up, and then I sprinkled a little bit of parsley on top of them. And here it is with our coleslaw that we made and our carrots. I thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. I hope you come back next time. We will see you then. Thank you.